Now that the legendaries have dropped with Season 1, the meta has gone crazy. And now champions we haven't seen in the meta for a long time are coming to the forefront and even are ridiculous with some of their legendary cards. So today I'm going to go through the best champions that are currently in OB44. And I'd just like to let you know that they have actually hallmarked most of the champions I'm going to talk about today, and have said that they won't change until OB45, which they're going to announce on Friday, which probably means the patch will come maybe Monday to Wednesday. So you've got about a week of these very powerful champions, but I just want to let you know so you can try them out and maybe have a look at the loadouts as well. So let's address the big orc in the room. You know, the big blue orc. Grock, he's been in the bottom of the meta pretty much constantly the last few patches, and now he is probably the top. So why is he so powerful, you may ask? Well, it starts off with his legendary called Maelstrom. And what this does basically is buff his right click, the shock pulse. So it does a few things. The first off, it bounces 4 more times, so that's a lot of extra damage that you can be doing. And just to refresh your memory, shock pulse fires a projectile that does 125 damage every time it bounces, and also slows them by 30% for 2 seconds. Now they already buffed the amount of times the shock pulse jumped, but also with this legendary card, you get that extra 4 bounces, and furthermore, with your in-hand, or your weapon, doing damage with that will decrease the cooldown of shock pulse by 0.1 seconds. And basically you do damage every 0.1 seconds with your beam. And the cooldown reduction doesn't end there, because you can also use cards in your loadouts. And I took this loadout from watching District 69, the team that won the recent EU qualifier against, I think it was Wolves Esports. And the loadout is called Arc Lightning, and a couple of them used it in the game. So the big cooldown card is Thunderstruck 3, and basically it reduces the cooldown of Shock Pulse by 1 second for every unique enemy hit, and the maximum of 3. So that can take 3 seconds off of the cooldown, and to begin with, the cooldown is only 6 seconds anyway. And you can imagine now with this cooldown, this 3 seconds off, and the cooldown with your weapon, you're basically spamming that right click all the time. And with the extra bounces, you're basically slowing down your enemies, you're doing damage, and lots of it, and in a large area. And also, Arc Lightning 4, another card, increases the bounce range of Shock Pulse by 40%, and it actually is pretty big in game. And you can hit a rather large area, even if they aren't just clumped up. And this does work best against heavy tank lineups and death ball lineups, but it can work against just any enemies that are relatively close to each other. The other cards in this loadout that synergize with the Shock Pulse are Lightning Rod. So when you hit a champion with Shock Pulse, it heals you for 60. So just generally giving you a bit of sustain with basically this ability that you can spam. And Conduit, which gives you 4% movement speed for 2 seconds for each unique enemy hit by Shock Pulse. And the likelihood is you're going to hit 3 or 4 people in that. So you could be getting rather a lot of movement speed as well, just generally getting you around in the map. What it ends up with is Grock being super aggressive and also ending up on the top of the damage boards. And looking at Grock's own loadout at the moment, like his skills, he can put down his totem for himself, which is more sustain for himself with that heal from the shock pulse as well. And he can get away from most engagements by going into ghost form and also healing with ghost form in his totem. And generally he is very hard to kill, but also deals ridiculous amounts of damage, and is probably the most overpowered champion in the game at the moment, I would say, because of this shock pulse being able to be spammable. What I would say is that random teams in the game will see you take Grock and then won't pick a healer, but Grock really goes well with another healer in the team, as you're going to be playing him as a damage champion first and foremost, and oh boy, you're going to be doing a lot of damage. Anyway, you might have laughed at Grock before, and maybe after the patch, he won't be as powerful as he is now. What I think they might do is maybe look at trying to stop the cooldown, or putting in some hard cap for the cooldown, so that it can only happen once perhaps, because obviously you're spamming it at the moment. But we'll just have to see how they fix it. But at the moment, for the next week or so, this is a loadout. You can even look into my profile, look for Arc Lightning, and drop it into your own. Basically, if you go import on your loadouts and search for Joshino, search by name, search Joshino, and grab the Arc Lightning one, and you're going to have a good time. Next up, we have another support. I know, folks, it's a patch of the supports, and this one is Ying. So again, you might see a pattern here, but the legendary Lifelike, what it does is makes your illusions able to target 2 allies when healing. it can't target yourself and an ally. You can only target yourself alone, so that's one downside of it. But basically, at the bottom line, it's not you being healed up the most, it's your allies, and it's basically doing double the healing than it was before. And Ying was a big healer before. It was pretty easy to get into the high heals, even if you weren't great at the game. And now, you can get ridiculously high in the games. I've actually seen one where it was a long game, but a Ying had 400,000 healing. And even in a long game, you'd only probably get in the 200,000s with Ying with the healing. But that was ridiculous. And Ying at the moment, top healer in the game. It is ridiculous. And if you see her, you just want to focus down those illusions, get the Cauterize online, and just hope that you can basically break through the mega heals at the moment. But Ying and Grock together, pretty ridiculous. Mega heals and mega damage. And they're both supports. So supports are king this patch, folks. The next one up is Buck. And he's got a legendary card called Bounce House. And what this means is now Heroic Leap has 2 charges that have their own cooldowns, which basically equates to you being able to jump twice. And usually I've talked about how characters with the highest mobility in the game are usually the ones that are considered most OP, or at least in Maeve's case, in public games, the most OP. And in this case, it's the same, because basically you can dodge damage. You can come in, do all your damage you want, get out as quick as possible, and come back in again, come back out again. And part of Paladins is about getting out of the combat, healing up, because you can obviously heal out of combat. You don't have to find health packs or anything. So engaging and disengaging is very powerful, and it's just the case here as well. And also his leap does do damage, so you're doing the extra damage from the leap as well as being able to get in and out of the fights as you will. And along with the fact that Buck can heal with his Q as well, it just makes him extremely powerful in this patch, and he's actually been picked a lot in the competitive scene, along with Ying and along with Grock, as they are seen as very powerful champions in this patch. And this card is probably going to see some sort of downsides as well, maybe making the second leap on a higher cooldown or something like that to tweak it out so it isn't so ridiculous and just generally the best pick for him at the moment. So those are the 3 that I think really have seen some power in this patch and are the ones that are the kings of the meta, and that at least even in the competitive scene and not just the public stomps, they are just shining and shining pretty bright. But there are some honourable mentions, so I'd like to first mention Maeve. So Maeve has got a card called Cat Burglar. Cat Burglar gives you triple jump over double jump. And the thing is, as again, like I was saying before, that movement in the game, especially towards the lower level, this where it's harder to hit champions because your aim isn't as good, movement is king. And being able to jump that 3rd time, it synergizes with your prowl, your F ability where you're running around fast. You can basically jump over and jump around cover and different levels of the map much easier. But also it just gives you that extra dodge potential when you're 1v1ing somebody. Being able to jump that 3rd time, you're able to dodge your enemy's shots. And especially if they're not great at trekking with their aim, you are going to have the advantage. And I think this is the big one, especially in pub games. Maeve has become more powerful and more effective than she was before. But in the esports scene, and why she's got an honourable mention, she doesn't really be seeming to be picked up as much. She was picked up earlier in the patch in some of the leagues, but I haven't seen her as much in these open qualifiers. Probably because she's being outshone by Buck at the moment. And I'd also like to mention Androxus, because of his Dark Stalker card, which means that instead of having 1 basic use on the nether step, but you get 3 jumps, you have basically 3 charges on the nether step, but they're each individual. Now, it doesn't sound that OP to begin with, but what it actually equates to is being able to nether step every second or 2, and the cooldowns are pretty quick. And this synergizes with the card Abyss Walker, which heals you every time you jump. But also, with the dodging, and like I said, movement is king, you're able to jump over walls, get out of the fights, much easier than you were before because your nether step is almost always there for you. You're also able to dodge around and dodge people's aim and throw off their trekking, and generally that makes Androxus quite a bit more powerful. The next one is Drogos, and I think personally that his Fusillade direct shots deal 50% more damage is rather powerful, and we saw it on Bugsy from District 69 in the open qualifiers, and how it's actually really powerful at taking out Ying clones in one shot every time. So a bit of a counter to the mega healer we've got at the moment in the game, but also just generally that damage, and in the right hands, so somebody that can track people, can fire and give the, basically you have to estimate with the rockets and like how somebody's moving, how far away you are, so it takes a bit of skill to get those shots off. So I think in the higher level skill brackets, that extra damage on Drogo's weapon, where you're taking into those thousands of damage on the direct hits, can be quite damaging. There are lots of other good legendaries in the game, but I think that these ones stand out the most, and also there are some honorable mentions as well of champions that just seem to have gotten quite powerful. So anyway, mainly those 3 champions I mentioned at the start are quite ridiculous at the moment and have just received some extreme power to their loadouts and are performing up and above what they perhaps should be in games at the moment, and are probably ones that you should have a little look at. And also, I've given those 3 that I think deserved a honorable mention. And there are the ones like Kinessa with a 50% headshot and in the right hands that can be pretty insane, and Barrick's definitely come back into the meta and his range changes have really helped him out. But again, those ones at the start are the ones I think really shine. Are there any champions you think actually have come out of their shells and are making their way into the meta in OB44? And what would you change in OB45? And what would you say to the devs, this needs to be changed or that needs to be changed about the legendary cards? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button. If you thought it was awful, hit the dislike button if you really have to. Subscribe for more of my content, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Joshino.